Chapter 26, Aboard the Egyptian Queen, Carter. As far as Rise to the Land of Dead go, the boat was pretty cool. It had multiple decks with ornate railings painted black and green. The side paddle wheels churned the river into froth, and along the paddle wheel housings, the name of the boat glittered with gold letters, Egyptian Queen. At first, you'd think the boat was just a tourist attraction, one of those floating casinos or cruise boats for old people. But if you looked closer, you started noticing strange little details. The boat's name was written in Demotic and in hieroglyphics underneath the English. Sparkly smoke billowed from the stacks as if the engines were burning gold. Orbs of multicolored fire flitted around the decks, and on the prow of the ship, two painted eyes moved and blinked, scanning the river for trouble. "That's odd," Sadie remarked. I nodded. "I've seen eyes painted on boats before. They still do that over in the Mediterranean, but usually they don't move." "What? No, not the stupid eyes. That lady on the highest deck, isn't that—" Sadie broke into a grin. "Bast!" Sure enough, our favorite feline was leaning out over the window of the pilot's house. I was about to wave to her when I noticed the creature standing next to Boss, gripping the wheel. He had a human body and was dressed in the white uniform of a boat captain, but instead of a head, a double-bladed axe sprouted from his collar. And I'm not talking about a small axe for chopping wood, I'm talking battle axe. Twin crescent-shaped iron blades, one in front where his face should be, one in the back. The edges splattered with suspicious-looking dried red splotches. The ship pulled up to the dock. Balls of fire began zipping around, lowering the gangplank, tying off ropes, and basically doing crew-type stuff. How did they do it without hands and without setting everything on fire? I don't know, but it wasn't the strangest thing I'd seen that week. Boss climbed down from the wheelhouse. She hugged us as we came aboard, even Khufu, who tried to return the favor by grooming her for lice. "I'm glad you survived," Boss told us. "What happened?" We gave her the basics, and her hair poofed out again. "Elvis? Gah! Thought was getting cruel in his old age. Well, I can't say I'm glad to be on this boat again. I hate the water, but I suppose—" "You've been on this boat before?" I asked. Boss' smile wavered. "A million questions as usual, but let's eat first. The captain is waiting." I wasn't anxious to meet a giant axe, and I wasn't enthusiastic about another one of Boss' grilled cheese and Frisky's dinners, but we followed her inside the boat. The dining parlor was lavishly decorated in Egyptian style. Colorful murals depicted the gods covered the walls. Gilded columns supported the ceilings. A long dining table was laden with every kind of food you could want. Sandwiches, pizzas, hamburgers, Mexican food, you name it. It was way made up for Missing Thoth's barbecue. On a side table stood an ice chest, a line of golden goblets, and a soda dispenser with about 20 different choices. The mahogany chairs were carved to look like baboons, which reminded me a little too much of Graceland's jungle room, but Khufu thought they were okay. He barked at his chair just to show it who was top monkey, then sat on its lap. He picked up an avocado from a basket of fruit and started peeling it. Across the room, a door opened and the axe dude came in. He had to duck to avoid cleavering the door frame. "Lord and Lady Kane," the captain said, bowing. His voice was a quivery hum that resonated along his front blade. I saw a video one time of a guy playing music by hitting a saw with a hammer, and that's sort of the way the captain sounded. "It is an honor to have you aboard." "Lady Kane," Sadie mused. "I like that." "I am Bloodstained Blade," the captain said. "What are your orders?" Sadie raised an eyebrow at Boss. "He takes orders from us?" "Within reason," Boss said. "He is bound to your family. Your father—" she cleared her throat. "Well, he and your mother summoned this boat." The axe demon made a disapproving hum. "You haven't told them, goddess?" "I'm getting to it," Boss grumbled. "Told us what?" I asked. "Just details," she rushed on. "The boat can be summoned once a year and only in times of great need. You'll need to give the captain your orders now. He must have clear directions if we're to proceed, safely." I wondered what was bothering Boss, but the axe dude was waiting for orders, and the flecks of dried blood on his blades told me I'd better not keep him in suspense. "We need to visit the Hall of Judgment," I told him. "Take us to the land of the dead." Bloodstained Blade hummed thoughtfully. "I will make the arrangements, Lord Kane, but it will take time." "We don't have a lot of that," I turned to Sadie. "It's, what, the evening of the 27th? She nodded in agreement. "Day after tomorrow at sunrise, Set completes his pyramid and destroys the world unless we stop him. So yes, Captain Very Large Blade, or whatever it is, I'd say we're in a bit of a rush." "We will, of course, do our best," said Bloodstained Blade, though his voice sounded a little, well, sharp. "The crew will prepare your staterooms. Will you dine while you wait?" I looked at the table laden with food and realized how hungry I was. I hadn't eaten since we were in the Washington Monument. "Yeah, thanks, BSB." The captain bowed again, which made him look a little too much like a guillotine. Then he left us to our dinner. At first, I was too busy eating to talk. I inhaled a roast beef sandwich, a couple pieces of cherry pie with ice cream, and 3 glasses of ginger ale before I finally came up for air. Sadie didn't eat as much. Then again, she'd had lunch on the plane. She settled for a cheese and cucumber sandwich and one of those weird British drinks she likes. A Ribena? Khufu carefully picked out everything that ended with O. Doritos, Oreos, and some chunks of meat. Buffalo, armadillo, I was too scared to guess. The balls of fire floated attentively around the room, refilling our goblets and clearing away our plates as we finished. After so many days spent running for our lives, it felt good just to sit at a dinner table and relax. The captain's informing us that he couldn't transport us instantly to the land of the dead was the best news I'd had in a long time. Ah, Khufu wiped his mouth and grabbed one of the balls of fire. He fashioned it into a glowing basketball and snorted at me. For once, I was pretty sure what he'd said in Baboon. It wasn't an invitation. It meant something like, I'm going to play basketball by myself now. I will not invite you because your lack of skill would make me throw up. No problem, man, I said, though my face felt hot with embarrassment. Have fun. Khufu snorted again, then loped off with a ball under his arm. I wondered if he'd find a court somewhere on board. At the far end of the table, Boss pushed her plate away. She hardly touched her tuna friskies. Not hungry, I asked. Oh, I suppose not. She turned her goblet listlessly. She was wearing an expression I didn't associate with cats. Guilt. Sadie and I locked eyes. We had a brief silent exchange, something like, you ask her. No, you. Of course, Sadie's better at giving dirty looks, so I lost the contest. Boss, I said, what did the captain want you to tell us? She hesitated. Oh, that, you shouldn't listen to demons. Bloodstained Blade is bound by magic to serve, but if he ever got loose, he'd use that axe on all of us, believe me. You're changing the subject, I said. Boss traced her fingers along the table, drawing hieroglyphs in the condensation ring from her goblet. The truth? I haven't been on board since the night your mother died. Your parents had docked this boat on the Thames. After the accident, your father brought me here. This is where we made our deal. I realized she meant right here at this table. My father had sat here in despair after Mom's death, and no one to console him except the cat goddess, an axe demon, and a bunch of floating lights. I studied Boss' face in the dim light. I thought about the painting we found at Graceland. Even in human form, Boss looked so much like that cat, a cat drawn by some artist thousands of years ago. It wasn't just a chaos monster, was it? I asked. Boss eyed me. What do you mean? The thing you were fighting when our parents released you from the obelisk. It wasn't just a chaos monster. You were fighting Apophis. All around the parlor, the servant fires dimmed. One dropped a plate and fluttered nervously. Don't say the serpent's name, Boss warned, especially as we head into the night. Night is his realm. It's true then, Sadie shook her head in dismay. Why didn't you say anything? You did lie to us. Boss dropped her gaze. Sitting in the shadows, she looked weary and frail. Her face was etched with the traces of old battle scars. I was the Eye of Ra, she spoke quietly. The sun god's champion, the instrument of his will. Do you have any idea what an honor that is? She extended her claws and studied them. When people see pictures of Ra's warrior cat, they assume it's Sekhmet, the lioness. And she was his first champion, it's true, but she was too violent, too out of control. Eventually, Sekhmet was forced out to step down, and Ra chose me as his fighter, Little Bast. Why do you sound ashamed? Sadie asked. You said it's an honor. At first, I was proud, Sadie. I fought the serpent for ages. Cats and snakes are mortal enemies. I did my job well. But then Ra withdrew to the heavens. He bound me to the serpent with his last spell. He cast us both into that abyss, where I was charged to fight the serpent and keep it down forever. A realization crept over me. So you weren't a minor prisoner. You were imprisoned longer than any of the other gods? She closed her eyes. I still remember Ra's words. My loyal cat, this is your greatest duty. And I was proud to do it for centuries, then millennia. Can you imagine what it was like? Knives against fangs, slashing and thrashing, a never-ending war in the darkness. Our life forces grew weaker, my enemies and mine, and I began to realize that was Ra's plan. The serpent and I would rip each other into nothingness, and the world would be safe. Only in this way could Ra withdraw with peace of mind, knowing chaos would not overcome Ma'at. I would have done my duty, too. I had no choice until your parents gave you an escape route, I said, and you took it. Boss looked up miserably. I am the queen of cats. I have many strengths, but to be honest, Carter, cats are not very brave. And, your enemy. He stayed trapped in the abyss. Your father and I were sure of it. The serpent was already greatly weakened from eons of fighting with me. And when your mother used her own life force to close the abyss, well, she worked a powerful feat of magic. There should have been no way for the serpent to break through that kind of seal. but as the years have gone by, we became less and less sure that the prison would hold him. If somehow he managed to escape and regain his strength, I cannot imagine what would happen, and it would be my fault. I tried to imagine the serpent, Apophis, a creature of chaos, even worse than Seth. I pictured Boss with her knives, locked in combat with a monster for eons. Maybe I shouldn't have been angry at Boss for not telling us the truth earlier. Instead, I felt sorry for her. She had been put in the same position we were in, forced to do a job that was way too big for her. So why did my parents release you, I asked. Did they say? She nodded slowly. I was losing my fight. Your father told me that your mother had foreseen horrible things if the serpent overcame me. They had to free me, give me time to heal. They said it was the first step in restoring the gods. I don't pretend to understand their whole plan. I was relieved to take your father's offer. I convinced myself I was doing the right thing for the gods. But it does not change the fact that I was a coward. I failed in my duty. It isn't your fault, I told her. It wasn't fair of Ra to ask of you. Carter's right, Sadie said. That's too much sacrifice for one person, one cat goddess, whatever. It was my king's will, Boss said. The pharaoh can command his subjects for the good of the kingdom, even to lay down their lives, and they must obey. Horus knew this. He was the pharaoh many times. She speaks truly, Horus said. Then you had a stupid king, I said. The boat shuddered as if we'd ground the keel over a sandbar. Be careful, Carter, Boss warned. Ma'at, the order of creation, hinges on loyalty to the rightful king. If you question it, you will fall under the influence of chaos. I felt so frustrated. I wanted to break something. I wanted to yell that order didn't seem much better than chaos if you had to get yourself killed for it. You are being childish, Horus scolded. You are a servant of Ma'at. These thoughts are unworthy. My eyes stung. Then maybe I'm unworthy. Carter? Sadie asked. Nothing, I said. I'm going to bed. I stormed off. One of the flickering lights joined me, guiding me upstairs to my quarters. The stateroom was probably very nice. I didn't pay attention. I just fell on the bed and passed out. I seriously needed an extra-strength magic pillow because my ba refused to stay put. And no, Sadie, I don't think wrapping my head in duct tape would have worked either. My spirit floated up to the steamboat wheelhouse, but it wasn't blood-stained Blade at the wheel. Instead, a young man in leather armor navigated the boat. His eyes were outlined with kohl, and his head was bald except for a braided ponytail. The guy definitely worked out because his arms were ripped. A sword like mine was strapped to his belt. The river is treacherous, he told me in a familiar voice. A pilot cannot get distracted. He must always be alert for sandbars and hidden snags. That's why boats are painted with my eyes, you know, to see the dangers. The eyes of Horus, I said. You. The falcon god glanced at me, and I saw his eyes were two different colors, one blazing yellow like the sun, the other reflective silver like the moon. The effect was so disorienting, I had to look away, and when I did, I noticed that Horus's shadow didn't match his form. Stretched across the wheelhouse was the silhouette of a giant falcon. You wonder if order is better than chaos, he said. You become distracted from our real enemy, Set. You should be taught a lesson. I was about to say, no, really, that's okay, but immediately my ba was whisked away. Suddenly, I was on board of an airplane, a big international aircraft like planes my dad and I had taken 1,000,000 times. Zia, Rashid, Desjardins, and 2 other magicians were scrunched up in the middle row, surrounded by families with screaming children. Zia didn't seem to mind. She meditated calmly with eyes closed, while Desjardins and the other 2 men looked so uncomfortable I almost wanted to laugh. The plane rocked back and forth. Desjardins spilled wine all over his lap. The seatbelt light blinked on and a voice crackled over the intercom. This is the captain. It looks like we'll be experiencing some minor turbulence as we make our descent into Dallas. So I'm going to ask the flight attendants. Boom! A blast rattled the windows. Lightning followed immediately by thunder. Zia's eyes snapped open. The Red Lord! The passengers screamed as the plane plummeted several hundred feet. Ill commence! Desjardins shouted over the noise. Quickly! As the plane shook, passengers shrieked and grabbed their seats. Desjardins got up and opened the overhead compartments. Sir! A flight attendant yelled. Sir, sit down! Desjardins ignored the attendant. He grabbed 4 familiar bags, magical toolkits, and threw them to his colleagues. Then things went really wrong. A horrible shudder passed through the cabin and the plane lurched sideways. Outside the right-hand windows, I saw the plane's wing get sheared off by a 500-mile-an-hour wind. The cabin devolved into chaos, drinks, books, and shoes flying everywhere, oxygen masks dropping and tangling, people screaming for their lives. Protect the innocents, Desjardins ordered. The plane began to shake and cracks appeared in the windows and walls. The passengers went silent, slumping into unconsciousness as the air pressure dropped. The 4 magicians raised their wands as the airplane broke into pieces. For a moment, the magicians floated in a maelstrom of storm clouds, chunks of fuselage, luggage, and spinning passengers still strapped to their seats. Then a white glow expanded around them, a bubble of power that flowed the breakup of the plane and kept the pieces swirling in a tight orbit. Desjardins reached out his hand, and the edge of a cloud stretched toward him. A tendril of cottony white mist, like a safety line. The other magicians did likewise, and the storm bent to their will. White vapor wrapped around them and began to send out more tendrils, like funnel clouds, which snatched pieces of the plane and pulled them back together. A child fell past Zia, but she pointed her staff and murmured a spell. A cloud enveloped the child and brought her back. Soon the four magicians were reassembling the plane around them, sealing the breaches with cloudy cobwebs until the entire cabin was encased in a glowing cocoon of vapor. Outside, the storm raged and thunder boomed, but the passengers slept soundly in their seats. "Zia," Desjardins shouted, "we can't hold this for long." Zia ran past him up the aisle to the flight deck. Somehow, the front of the plane had survived the breakup intact. The door was armored and locked, but Zia's staff flared and the door melted like wax. She stepped through and found 3 unconscious pilots. The view through the window was enough to make me sick. Through the spiraling clouds, the ground was coming up fast, very fast. Zia slammed her wand against the controls. Red energy surged through the displays. Dials spun, meters blinked, and the altimeter leveled out. The plane's nose came up, its speed dropping. As I watched Zia gliding the plane toward a cow pasture and landed it without even a bump. Then her eyes rolled back in her head and she collapsed. Desjardins found her and gathered her in his arms. Quickly, he told his colleagues, the mortals will wake soon. They dragged Zia out of the cockpit and my ba was swept away with a blur of images. I saw Phoenix again, or at least some of the city. A massive red sandstorm churned across the valley, swallowing buildings and mountains. In the harsh, hot wind, I heard Set laughing, reveling in his power. Then I saw Brooklyn, Amos's ruined house on the East River, and a winter storm raging overhead, howling winds slamming the city with sleet and hail. And then I saw a place I didn't recognize, a river winding through a desert canyon. The sky was a blanket of pitch-black clouds, and the river's surface seemed to boil. Something was moving under the water, something huge, evil, and powerful, and I knew it was waiting for me. This is only the beginning, Horus warned me. Set will destroy everyone you care about, believe me, I know. The river became a marsh of tall reeds. The sun blazed overhead. Snakes and crocodiles slid through the water. At the water's edge sat a thatched hut. Outside it, a woman and child of about 10 stood examining a battered sarcophagus. I could tell the coffin had once been a work of art, gold encrusted with gems, but now it was dented and black with grime. The woman ran her hands over the coffin's lid. Finally, she had my mother's face, her blue eyes and caramel-colored hair, but she glowed with magical radiance, and I knew I was looking at the goddess Isis. She turned to the boy. "We have searched so long, my son. Finally, we have retrieved him. I will use my magic and give him life again." "Papa?" The boy gazed wide-eyed at the box. "He's really inside?" "Yes, Horus, and now?" Suddenly their hut erupted into flames. The god Set stepped from the inferno, a mighty red-skinned warrior with smoldering black eyes. He wore the double crown of Egypt and the robes of a pharaoh. In his hands, an iron staff smoldered. "Found the coffin, did you?" he said. "Good for you." Isis reached toward the sky. She summoned lightning against the god of chaos, but Set's rod absorbed the attack and reflected it back at her. Arcs of electricity blasted the goddess and sent her sprawling. "Mother!" The boy threw a knife and charged Set. "I'll kill you!" Set bellowed with laughter. He easily sidestepped the boy and kicked him into the dirt. "You have spirit, nephew," Set admitted, "but you won't live long enough to challenge me. As for your father, I'll just have to dispose of him more permanently." Set slammed his iron staff against the coffin's lid. Isis screamed as the coffin shattered like ice. "Make a wish," Set blew with all of his might, and the shards of coffin flew into the sky, scattering in all directions. "Poor Osiris, he's gone to pieces, scattered all over Egypt now. And as for you, sister Isis, run. That's what you do best." Set lunged forward. Isis grabbed her son's hand, and they both turned into birds, flying for their lives. The scene faded, and I was back at the steamboat's wheelhouse. The sun rose in fast forward as towns and barges sped past, and the banks of the Mississippi blurred into a play of light and shadows. "He destroyed my father," Horus told me. "He will do the same to yours." "No," I said. Horus fixed me with those strange eyes, one blazing gold, one full moon silver. "My mother and nephew Nephthys spent years searching for the pieces of the coffin and father's body. When they collected all 14, my cousin Anubis helped bind my father back together with mummy wrappings, but still mother's magic could not bring him back to life fully. Osiris became an undead god, a half-living shadow of my father, fit to rule only in the Duat. But his loss gave me anger. Anger gave me the strength to defeat Set and take the throne for myself. You must do the same." "I don't want a throne," I said. "I want my dad." "Don't deceive yourself. Set is merely toying with you. He will bring you to despair, and your sorrow will make you weak." I have to save my dad. That is not your mission, Horace chided. The world is at stake. Now wake. Sadie was shaking my arm. She and Boss stood over me, looking concerned. What? I asked. We're here, Sadie said nervously. She changed into a fresh linen outfit, black this time, which matched her combat boots. She even managed to red-eye her hair so that her streaks were blue. Re-dye her hair so that her streaks were blue. I sat up and realized I felt rested for the first time in a week. My soul must have been traveling, but at least my body had gotten some sleep. I glanced out of the stateroom window. It was pitch black outside. How long was I out? I demanded. We've sailed down most of the Mississippi and into the Duat, Boss said. Now we approach the first cataract. The first cataract? I asked. The entrance, Boss said grimly, to the land of the dead.